Deep in the heart of Appalachia, where the hollers run cold and the air hangs heavy with secrets, there's a place no one speaks of after sundown. They call it Wither's Hollow. Folks will tell you it's just a patch of land where nothing grows, but the old-timers know better. They say, don't whistle near the hollow. Don't stare too long into the fog. And if you ever see a woman with crooked eyes, don't run, don't speak, just bow your head and pray she don't notice you.
Long before the roads came, before the power lines stretched like spider webs across the mountains, she was already there. People didn't call her by her full name, Eda May Wither. Around the holler, they just said Granny Eda, though no one could ever quite say whose granny she was. She lived alone in a sagging cabin at the far edge of Wither's Hollow, a sunless patch of woods where moss grew thick on every trunk and the trees leaned toward each other like they were whispering. Her house stood on a patch of land where nothing would grow, not wildflowers, not weeds, just dead soil, gray and sour. Some said the ground had been cursed during the war. Others whispered it was something deeper, older, buried beneath. Nobody dared dig to find out. What unsettled folks most weren't her strange habits or the dead animals hanging from her porch. It was her eyes. One eye was pale and cloudy, like it was always looking up at something you couldn't see. The other was coal black, sharp, unblinking. People said it felt like she wasn't just looking at you, she was looking through you. Like she could see every lie you ever told, every sin you tried to bury. Still, people came to her. When fevers ran high or babies were born early, they came. When crops failed or dreams turned sour, they came. She never turned anyone away. She'd grind herbs, brew teas, whisper to bones. She could draw out snake venom with a rusty knife and a black feather. A man once brought her his dead child, blue and stiff. She rocked it in her arms, sang a song in a language no one knew, and the baby gasped back to life. Folks never forgot that. But they didn't thank her either. They just left coins in the old tin bucket by the gate and backed away slow. She rarely spoke in public, but those who got close said she muttered strange things to herself. Not prayers, but questions, like she was always waiting on an answer from somewhere else. Sometimes, at night, if you were close enough to the hollow, you could hear her voice floating through the trees, soft and low, not quite a song, not quite a spell. Over time, the air around her changed. The woods near her cabin grew too quiet. Birds stopped nesting there. Dogs wouldn't walk past her fence. Children would wake screaming after walking near her land, saying they dreamed of a face with one glowing eye and a mouth that kept whispering but never moved. People started to say she wasn't healing anymore. She was trading. That every sickness she took away had to go somewhere. And maybe she wasn't giving it to the earth or the wind or God. Maybe she was feeding something else, something that lived in the roots, or deeper still. Then came the night little Benny Harper disappeared. But that is another story. It was the first hard frost of the season when Benny Harper vanished. The boy was only 6, barely tall enough to reach the latch on the chicken coop. His mother said he had run off chasing their dog, a mutt named Jasper with more bark than brain. They'd been playing near the edge of the woods, where the fields turn dark and the trees start to crowd each other like guilty men. Benny didn't come back for supper. At first, they thought he'd gotten turned around, maybe wandered deeper into the pines. But Jasper came back just after dusk, limping and soaked to the bone. He collapsed at the Harper doorstep, tongue blue, eyes wide and glassy, like he'd seen something no dog should see. Benny wasn't with him. The whole town came out the next morning, lanterns in hand, boots crunching frost-bitten grass. They searched the fields, the creek beds, the hills, but no sign of Benny. It wasn't until one of the searchers, a trapper named Lou Minton, got the idea to check the old root cellar behind Granny Eda's cabin that things turned. He said he didn't go there out of suspicion, just that the earth felt strange underfoot that morning. Too still, too soft, like it was holding its breath. The cellar door was wedged under a slab of old wood, half covered in moss and rotting leaves. No one even knew it was there until Lou cleared it. He called for help, said the hinges creaked like a scream when he opened it. What they found inside didn't make sense. Shelves lined with jars full of things that didn't belong in jars. Feathers, teeth, a cluster of tiny hands, still pink beneath the brine. Bones, piled neatly in corners. Most were animal, maybe. Some were not. One skull, half buried in dust, still had a tooth hanging loose from its jaw, and sockets too small for any grown man. Lou swore he saw something move down there. Not an animal, not a person, but something long and thin that slipped between the stones and vanished. He didn't go back down. No one did. When they came for Granny Eda, she didn't run. She was already standing at the edge of town, waiting. She wore her veil, black as pitch, and held a small bundle in her hands. Something wrapped in cloth. She handed it to Benny's mother without a word. When the mother unwrapped it, she screamed. It was a toy horse carved from applewood, Benny's favorite, slick with something dark and dried. No one spoke as they dragged her to the churchyard. She didn't protest, just smiled beneath that veil, the kind of smile that makes the hairs on your neck go stiff. One of her eyes shimmered white, the other burned red for a moment, like a coal catching wind. They tied her to a stake and lit the wood. The fire roared up like it had been waiting, but before it could touch her, the wind shifted, fast, violent. The flames rose and twisted, but never touched her body. When the smoke cleared, the ropes were still there, the stake still there, but Granny Eda was gone. Not a single footprint in the ash. They searched for days, tore apart her house, dug up the earth, nothing. Just silence, thick as molasses. And from that night on, no one ever dared set foot in Wither Hollow again. But some say, on cold autumn nights, if you pass by the ruins of her cabin, you might still hear the sound of something scraping beneath the soil. Something small, something slow. Like tiny hands scratching at the underside of the world.
Years passed. The frost came earlier with each new season, biting through coats and bone like the mountains had turned mean. Crops that once thrived withered before harvest. Animals were born sick or still. Babies cried through the night for no reason at all and wouldn't stop until their parents whispered her name, not in reverence, but in a trembling kind of dread. Folks started to speak of a presence lingering in the hollow, not just memories or old fears, but something real, something awake. No one saw her again, not exactly, but signs began to appear. Dogs refused to go near the old fence line. Birds fell quiet when flying over the hollow. A preacher riding through claimed the trees were growing in unnatural patterns, curving inward like they were being pulled towards something buried beneath them. Hunters came back pale and shaking, saying they'd heard a woman humming in the fog. One even claimed he saw a figure walking across the creek barefoot, veil blowing though there was no wind. He didn't return to those woods again. Moved to Tennessee, never spoke of it after. In 1964, a group of teens from the nearby town of Arbor Hollow dared each other to spend the night near the ruins of Granny Eda's cabin. There were 5 of them. Only 4 came back. They found the missing boy's clothes folded neatly by the tree line, still warm, as if he just stepped out of them. The others wouldn't speak of what they saw. One never spoke again at all. His hair turned white by the time he was 20. And then there was the hiker in 1998. His name was Paul Loring, a student from Ohio who'd come down looking to see the real Appalachia. He told his girlfriend he'd be back by nightfall after exploring an unmarked trail that locals avoided. He didn't come back. She went looking for him the next morning, found his backpack by a stream, zipped and unopened. Just past the water, there was a clearing, one that hadn't been on any map. She said it felt wrong, like the light didn't behave the way it should. There was a fog clinging to the ground, thick and unmoving, and then she heard it, someone whispering her name. She turned, expecting Paul, but instead saw a woman standing at the edge of the woods. Her dress was old black, like something from another century. She wore a veil, and though her face was hidden, the air around her seemed to tremble, like even the world itself was holding its breath. One of her eyes glowed white through the fabric. The other was darker than the forest behind her. It didn't shine, it absorbed. The girl ran. She didn't look back, not even when she heard footsteps behind her. Not human, not animal, but something limping in rhythm, dragging something heavy across the forest floor. Paul was never found. His boots were discovered 3 months later, high in a tree, 30 feet above ground, still laced. Since then, locals have stopped going near Withers Hollow entirely. The road has grown over, signs have been removed. GPS doesn't pick it up. If you ask someone in town about it, they'll either lie and say it never existed, or they'll look you dead in the eye and say, "Don't ask about her," because she walks still. Maybe not always in the hollow. Maybe not even always in Appalachia, but she walks, she waits. And sometimes, when the air turns quiet and the wind dies completely, she listens. They say she doesn't hunt the wicked or the cruel. No, Granny Eda doesn't care about sins or shame. She only comes for the curious. And once you've seen her, really seen her, she's already seen you. They say she doesn't speak. Not with words, anyway. Some claim that if you get too close to Withers Hollow, or whatever remains of it now, you'll feel it first in your ears, a low hum, almost like the buzzing of flies or the pull of static. Some describe it as a tune, others as a whisper in a language they don't know but somehow understand. Whatever it is, it doesn't stop when you plug your ears. It's not outside you, it's inside, burrowing. There are stories, quiet ones, passed like warnings from one family to another, of people who went missing not just in the hollow but miles away, in different counties altogether. One girl vanished from her bedroom in Pikeville after telling her brother she saw a lady in a long dress waving at her from across the yard. A coal miner in Hazard, Kentucky said he dreamed of a crooked-eyed woman standing in a burned cabin, staring into a mirror that showed nothing but the backs of his own eyes. He shot himself 3 days later, left no note. She's not bound to the land anymore. Whatever they burned that night, it wasn't enough. What's worse, no one really agrees on what she wants. She doesn't kill outright. Not always. Some vanish. Some return shattered. And some just change. A little boy in Clay County stopped talking for 2 years after he wandered off on a school field trip and was found standing in the woods, eyes wide, hands full of damp earth. When he finally spoke again, he said, "She gave me back, but I think she kept something." So now the warnings have grown more specific. If you're walking alone near the tree line and the birds go silent, stop. If the wind dies all at once, turn around. If you hear your name spoken in a voice you know shouldn't be there, don't answer. Don't run. And above all, don't look. But if you do see her, if the fog parts and she's there, standing not far from you with that black veil draped over her, hands hanging limp at her sides, one eye glowing like a storm lantern and the other dark as sin, there's only one thing left to do. Drop a coin. That's what the old ones say. Doesn't matter what kind, a penny, a quarter, even a button if it's copper. Just drop it gently and don't speak. If she takes it, you leave. You never look back. If she doesn't, pray you never dream again. Because the ones she chooses, she doesn't take all at once. She lingers. She follows. And from the moment you see her, you're never truly alone again.